I absolutely do think that you could write pretty much anything as a miniatures war game. Um, I agree that
I
sometimes
know,
there's a
but like
question.
people will play trading duels games if it's a card game. No one's going to play that damn game. I don't know why. There's a
I
bug
mean,
in the
I
system.
I don't, and this is the thing, right? You write a trading card game, and someone's got to buy the cards and buy the whole thing. I could you could put 20 different skirmish games into a single book, each of them doing a different thing. I think one of I think one of the problems with possibly tabletop war games is that it's got to justify an entire 200-page book, or whatever it's going to be, um, and people have then got to read through that whole book, and you've got to re-explain line of sight and movement and blah 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 and all those sorts of things. And I think I personally, the truth of the matter is that the thing about those the dual trading card game is that it's got a rule book 2 pages long, and you're still being retold the things that you were told the last card game you played in the card game before that. Um, but you
And it's funny
don't.
because that in board games is a mark of prestige. If you can explain your game in less than 4 pages, that's
Oh
great.
yeah,
Pick it up, I can open it, I can be like, brilliant, let's get playing. And I can get straight into the tactical challenge and I don't have to worry about but that's not the product packaging of a, although I mean, but maybe that's it. Like maybe, maybe the incredibly flamboyant jewel trader miniatures, which are, beautiful Italian merchants from the 1700s, like maybe those are the painting project that you've always
mm.
wanted, and you can introduce a totally disinterested by warfare board
I
game
mean, yeah,
to the
absolutely.
wonderfulness of, you know
And I think one of the things is that you get boxed miniatures games that have got a rule book that's not particularly long. It's going to be like 5 to 10 pages, and it's full of way more miniatures than you'd ever need to play any game you've ever written. And the only difference between that and a tabletop war game is that they've also jammed in a board and 5 decks of cards and a handful of tokens, and then charged you, 200 quid for it. Um, I don't see why there isn't a thing where it's like, well, we've took out the board and we've took out the tokens and we took out all those other things, and you know, anyway, who knows? Who knows? Maybe that's just the world will not allow such things to occur.
I like
Either
I
way,
like that I like that idea though. I don't know if it's feasible, but it feels interesting to think about publishing or taking to a publisher a book of, some hilarious number like 50 or 100, like, because you could lock in that you could have separate subsections where it's like, okay, here's the core rules for this subsection, and then here's 25 games that do
mm.
something unique.
Yeah, no, I absolutely. I mean,
Here's investigating games, here's sneaking games, here's
yeah. I mean, you and I both know for a fact that if you had a set of rules which were movement works like this, line of sight works like this, weapons fall into these categories and they work like that, close combat works like this, long range combat works like that, you could then take about 50 of the existing skirmish games on the market and condense all of them down to about 50 pages
which I think,
because
actually, to be fair to them, I think that's broadly what one-page rules have done, or they haven't really explored their oeuvre enough. But I
I
think
mean,
that
yeah, yeah, I mean, when I looked at that, because you posted that thing about the jam, and I stuck that game into it. I have to say, because I you're meant to go through and rate other people's games. Crushingly disappointed by the other entries into the competition. All of them were the most route one. I've got a gun and my buddy stands next to me, and because he's my buddy, I'm more accurate with my gun. And just that in World War Two, World War One, the fighting in the Pacific over there with my nan. Yeah, no, but yeah, I don't know. I might just be sort of pissing into the void, but it does depress me when I see RPGs and board games being so creative and so out of the box and doing things that are so, you know, it's RPGs are considerably younger than tabletop war games. How come they've got the sort of mad, you know,
because they have the theatre of the mind. They are not tied down by a 4x4 gaming table that needs to be filled with terrain and 20 miniatures that need to be produced painstakingly and painted. I really genuinely think it's a problem of production, and I think that if we have this conversation again in 5 years and we both own a 3D printer, and so does pretty much everybody else who war games, like this won't even be a thing. We'll just be like, sure, we'll just design a game with merchants in. We'll just take some merchants from the Merchants of Venice computer game. We'll rip the things off. People can print those off.
Like, I know, possibly, yeah. I mean, possibly part of the reason that I feel the way I do is that I couldn't give 4 craps about what miniatures I'm playing a game with. I really don't mind if I'm playing it with bottle caps and pieces of paper and regularly.
Then it's not a tabletop miniatures game. It's just a tabletop game.
No, it absolutely is a tabletop miniatures game, because it's still about the physical position of the markers. The miniatures are just markers. It doesn't matter that
they're not to me. They're a intangible part of, I don't know, the cinema of it.
Yeah, but then you have the cinema of the mind.
Yeah, but it cuts to the point that, like, I'm at heart, I'm a model maker. Like, I'm delighted by that process.
Yeah, and and then you can make models. I mean, no part of the game is banning you from making models. If you love and enjoy acquiring and making models, isn't the game saying, "Hey, here's a new bunch of models"? That's the weird. That is a weird thing to me sometimes. It's like, well, the problem with this game is it requires people to buy like 20 crowd miniatures. No, it doesn't. It doesn't require anybody to buy anything. But people who want to buy 20 crowd miniatures will feel they require. Yeah, but they want to buy 20 crowd miniatures. So they're going to go, woohoo! I get to buy 20 crowd miniatures. And the people who don't want to will go, well, I'll just use bottle caps. I can give 3 shits. It doesn't make any difference. So where's the problem? Who's the person who's caught in the jaws of dilemma here? But we shall see.
That's weird.
Once I rule the world.
Yeah, it would be really nice. It would be really nice to be in a situation where boxed miniature games were the things that we were wondering about, because it is such a constraint working with other people's miniatures. And it's an interesting constraint. Like, it's causing a lot of interesting design to happen in my brain, but it is ultimately frustrating. Because solving the problem that you put forward there, like, it's just much easier for me to design a Weird West game than it is to design the Renaissance jewel merchants.
Yeah, but I mean, Weird West is such a bullshit. Steampunk, frankly, is such a sort of, and I love steampunk, but as a genre, it's a bullshit genre. That it's like, well, what even would be a Weird West? What about the game would make me go, oh yes, that is a Weird West game, when you pull the theme off and they've just, I don't even know. I have no idea what would be the mechanical element that would make me go, oh well, that has to be a Weird West game. I don't know what theme you're going to put on it, but it has to be Weird West, because what other theme would that sort of mechanics fit to, you mad person? I have no idea. And same for steampunk. I haven't got a clue. And I read a lot of steampunk, and I still don't really know what it is. It's not really a genre.
It's an aesthetic.
It is. It absolutely is. Yeah.
Which cuts back to the miniatures. Like, Malifaux works because it took a bunch of weird mishmashing things and it threw them together with a really consistent aesthetic. And you could sort of say, oh well, you couldn't have, necromancers and gunslingers in the same place, but like the gunslingers, like, there's one in Star Wars, and like there's plenty of people who can quick draw in other areas of narrative.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I personally, again, I think it's one of the reasons I've drifted away from Malifaux is that I feel like it doesn't have any consistent direction to what it's trying to represent on the tabletop. What it's trying to represent on the tabletop is a bunch of cool looking miniatures doing cool things, which is lovely. and everything, but I don't have any particular interest in seeing whether you can achieve a cool looking miniature doing a cool thing. I assume you can. It's a cool looking miniature. I assume it can do cool shit. Why would you not be able to have it do that?
The difference for me, and I haven't played the third edition, so I don't know, but like the first edition was like it was just that objective system where it said, hey, we're trying to like paste up posters that say that the other guy's a dickhead. And I was like, that's the game I want to play, where you paste up posters that makes the other guy look like a dickhead. And the only reason they're killing you is because you're carrying some posters that make you look like an idiot.
No, absolutely. And it's so weird that the reason I picked up the first game was the card system, instead of dice. And it's, and that was genuinely interesting, and it genuinely worked really well. But I don't feel like I don't know. To me, it feels like there didn't need to be a second edition, frankly, is what it comes down to, I guess. Anyway, this is even more content that the world will never see, and so it's horribly wasted.
That's all right. I'm still recording. I think
I'll put it on as a bonus track.
This bit's got more swearing in. I'm looking at I can't remember what the name of this is. Haru Ichiban. That's the sort of example of something where that definitely could work as a miniatures game. Like I don't know exactly, it's not exactly the same, but like gardening is an unexplored avenue for tabletop miniature games. Like perfect example of like contained space. There's reasons to move around. But I immediately want to for some reason everything's growing really quickly. Maybe you're on a spaceship and there's a hydroponics plant or something.
I mean, and this is the thing. You say, oh well, there'd have to be 20 miniatures for any miniatures game worth playing. I don't think that's true. I think I can absolutely write a miniatures game where there are 2 or 4 miniatures, and it's absolutely worth playing, and it's worth making the effort for.
Well, maybe the problem is with those fucking players. Maybe there's too narrow.
The sons of bitches.
Yeah, these motherfuckers.
I don't know. I don't know.
Presumably there was a point in cinema where a ton of rubbish movies were made because moviegoers just wanted to see westerns, and so people just kept making boxing movies and westerns. And eventually somebody came along and went, "Fuck it, we're going to make a movie with loads of close-ups, and it's going to be totally different." And we just aren't there yet. And like, either I'm the problem because I'm the one saying, "Well, I think people want to paint 20 goblins, and so therefore I'm going to write a game in which painting 20 goblins is a viable way of preparing to play," or like we can put out these artsy, got lots of close-ups miniature games, and people will just be like, "I don't care, like what even is this? Doesn't have 20 goblins in."
But I mean, the thing is, these things go, if you put out the game and it doesn't get promoted and put in on bookshelves and sold on Amazon, then it's not going to get played. And if it's not a game where somebody has to paint 20 goblins, it's not going to get promoted and picked up by a publisher and put on Amazon. And it is I don't know whether it's the writers or the publishers or the gamers, but I think it maybe it's just one of those things where the whole system, I suspect it takes somebody brave enough to actually put their head above the parapet and be a genuine success for. Because if you put out a tabletop miniatures game that actually shock horror attracted people who weren't interested in shooting each other in the face, like maybe not to be horribly reductionist, but like maybe girls or something, it feels like there's a market there. It feels like the entire other half of the human race might be a market. I mean, I could be wrong, but it seems like there are people who aren't interested in whether you can slice somebody up with a katana, that also are interested in entertainment and games and doing interesting things. I mean, like, yeah,
Well, presumably, I don't know, but presumably things like, have you played Wildlands?
I haven't played it, but I've seen it a lot.
Because presumably there's a sort of like cutesy thing that is eating at the edge of this problem, which is sort of saying, well, what if we made this thing kind of, the violence is really hidden and it's quite cutesy and anthropomorphic animals, and
I don't. I mean, I don't know, and I genuinely don't know how I feel about something like Wildlands, because it's a board game fundamentally. It's a skirmish level, it's miniatures, but it is a board game. It has sort of a board with spaces, and you have to be on a certain space to interact with somebody, and there isn't, the complexity of line of sight and movement, and that's not in any way a bad thing. I think it's an excellent game, but I don't know what it's saying about, about miniatures war games. I don't know if it's sort of ghettoizing them off into this sort of, you know what, if you sit down with a tape measure, you're a weirdo. You're a slightly,
the only I mean, I'm not certain I wouldn't prefer to write games on hexes or squares. It's just impractical for me, because the kind of market I'm writing for is or rather the kind of product I'm making is one that like hugely benefit. Like Gaslands is a bad example of this, because I sort of created my own hexes, but I had a ton of fun with, a lot of my early experiences were sort of squares based games and moving around, whether it be Warhammer Quest or Hero Quest or even earlier stuff like Battle of Little Bighorn. But if having squares is what makes it seem more approachable, like I don't think it makes it less, I don't think it has to make it less of a miniatures game.
The thing that always excites me about miniatures games is the freedom of them, and that ultimately is the thing that brings me back to them again and again and again. And it's the thing that I'm passionate about them is like you say, it's that place somewhere between RPGs that are this sort of completely loose thing, and board games that are, you will move to this space and you will blah blah blah.
Yeah,
It's that middle ground of, and it's it's why I love the multiple tables in A Billion Suns, and it's why I'm immensely happy that we did that, because that is the most freeing moment in the, when we had the conversation, and I was like, well, why can't I play on that table over there? What about this system wouldn't allow me to go, oh, okay, jump point over on that table? And we went, oh yeah, nothing in this system cares a damn as to whether you go over on that table. And that's just beautiful. There's something just absolutely beautiful about that. And no board game, no gridded, hexed, squared board game could ever do what A Billion Suns does there. It really couldn't. Even if you gave people multiple boards and you said, oh, shuffle them and pick them randomly, you couldn't give them that thing of going, yeah, you know what, the bookshelf and the high chair and the table, that's what we're playing on today. And that's the thing that I think that, that has to be there for, the why tabletop miniatures games have to sort of persist, because they are that thing of, and it's there in the modeling. It's that kid, who is playing with bottle caps and, He-Man figures, or, whatever random army men that he's picked up, and then can play something sophisticated and freeing and does, 20 fully sculpted beautiful miniatures and a full rule set costs a small fortune. A bag of army men and a paperback blue book doesn't. And it's for those kids who are playing with plant pots and books and empty bases, that you have to remember that one's my captain and that one's the medic, or whatever it happens to be. That's ultimately, I think, why I believe, I was that kid who had a 40k army that consisted solely of gene stealers, because I'd rip them all out of Space Hulk and then throw them onto the tabletop, and had hidden one of them under a cardboard building and enraged my friend when it ran out and decapitated his squad leader, because because that sort of thing matters, and you can't do it with a board game. A board game's great, but they do put this straitjacket on you, and I do care to see us maybe take that straitjacket off. It's just sad that the unstraitjacketed gaming experience is the incredibly straitjacketed gaming experience, where you will experience nothing apart from the joy of shooting another man in the face. So I don't know. I think there is a world of creativity available there. I don't know if we'll ever get to it and see it hit mainstream. Certainly not probably not in our lifetimes anyway. I worry if it doesn't, that miniatures wargaming will just dwindle off into this sort of corner of a little sort of withered appendix of gaming. But
yeah.
If that matters.
Now I'm thinking of like, it would be nice to do a sort of butterfly collecting game, but if you just swap the butterflies for a miniature that you do have, then it could be a goblin collecting game, and I do want to play a goblin collecting game.
Absolutely.
Maybe the goblins are loose somehow.
Absolutely. There needs to be a man with a sack and loads of little goblins on the loose, and one of you is playing the goblins and the other one's playing the man. Why should there not be? Why should there not be? Why is everything? Yeah. Anyway, yes, we'll write 20 games each, and we'll put them into a big book, and we'll release them, and the world will see our genius, and we'll prove everybody wrong.
Yeah, and Goblin Sack will be the
Goblin Sack will be the name of the book. Sack of Goblins.
Also the spiky death metal name of my new band.
Check out my Goblin Sack. It's green and hairy. More prog rock, probably.
Goblin Sack, yeah.
You're writing down Goblin Sack underlined 5 times in capital letters. And then put it over the corner and not remember what the hell it was. Why is there a folder?
But it's not, one person doesn't play the goblins, because there's also like a random, or maybe they do, but there's a spawning table where a vast ecology of sub-goblin species could potentially emerge with various rarities, and then everyone's trying to get the lesser spotted turbo goblin.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah. Why there aren't co-op skirmish games, why there aren't more AI skirmish games, why there aren't better skirmish games. You've got a folder with the Arkham character